At 17, she was the winner of the 2012 Sanofi BioGenius Challenge of Canada and was named in Canada's Future Leaders Under 25, the ones to watch. She discovered that cellulose, a material in trees that helps them stand up straight, is a powerful antioxidant with potent anti-aging properties. Through her research, she was able to identify a super durable material that has the power to fight disease while preventing aging. She is a recent graduate of Princeton University with a degree in molecular biology. Delegates, please give a huge hero's welcome to Janelle Tam.
Thank you guys so much. It's so good to be here, to see all of your smiling faces, to hear you guys, to talk to you. When I was thinking about what I wanted to talk about today, I thought back to what I would have wanted to know when I was you just 4 years ago. And immediately, so many things came to mind. I thought about talking about, how to know what you want to do in the future and how to get there, or how to get into the college of your dreams. But when I thought more about it, it really boiled down ultimately to one thing. And it's pretty simple. It's to find your value or purpose in what really matters. Let me explain this a little further. I think this is something really important to talk about when we're talking about medical professions. I was at a conference a couple of months ago, and a psychiatrist was talking about what he felt made his profession unique. And he said, being a doctor is really interesting because it's one of those professions in which your identity, or who you are, is wrapped up into your career and what you do. And so I think by thinking about this question and reflecting on it, what do you want your purpose of value in life to be? It can help you then answer all of those other questions like, what do I want to do in the future? Or even how do I get into this particular college? And if you want more of my thoughts on that, you can visit my blog. The address should be on screen. But that's what I'm going to be focusing on today. And the reason why I think this is so important is because when you do things for the right reasons and the right motivation, you then have the persistence to achieve that kind of success that you're searching for. So let me explain by giving you a bit of my story. So I started research in grade 9, sort of a picture in the lab. And I did it because, science was interesting and I really loved it, but just having it through textbooks was kind of dry. And I wanted to see if I could start discovering things by myself and asking my own questions and finding those answers. And it took a couple of years of working in this lab, but eventually my supervisor began to allow me to design my own projects. And I've been working on this nanoparticle called nanocrystalline cellulose. It is a rod-shaped nanoparticle found in trees, and it gives them their rigidity, and it has a lot of really interesting chemical properties. Things like it's non-toxic, it's stronger than steel at the same dimensions, and I wanted to look at whether or not I could couple it with other particles to see if it could be a good antioxidant. So I started, and I've been doing lab work for a couple years, so I thought it would all go smoothly. But in the first couple of months, literally nothing worked. The experimental protocols had problems, the equipment broke down, I couldn't get the reactions to do what they were supposed to. And I realized research is just kind of like that. It's like venturing into new territory as an explorer with only the vaguest outlines of a map, aka the other things that people have done before you. And I've recently become very interested in scientific histories. And so I read this book, The Gene by Siddhartha Mukherjee. He's a Pulitzer Prize-winning author and one of my favorite authors. And he basically chronicles the discovery of the gene and how we went from Mendel, who crossed pea plants, some of you may have learned about this in biology, to uncover the laws of inheritance, to 2015, where we uncovered or discovered the gene editing technique CRISPR. And if there's one lesson that I took from this 500-page chronicle of scientific discovery that went into discovering and manipulating the gene, it's this: that any significant scientific research takes significant amounts of committed effort. In other words, persistence, with a dash of serendipity. As the great inventor Thomas Edison once said, genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. And so for me, I sort of just kept on going. There wasn't really a particular secret sauce. And after a couple of months, my experiments began to come together. And that's when I discovered that nanocrystalline cellulose is a good antioxidant, opening up potential new applications for it in healthcare and cosmetics. And that's when I won the National Science Fair in Canada and published a paper and filed a patent and had my research featured in over 34 countries and 16 languages. It really was success beyond my wildest dreams. But I had never really thought about that this would happen at the very beginning of my journey. But what I did take as a lesson from this experience was that we need to be persistent to get to that kind of success. But that to me begged another question, because it's easy for me to come up here and say to you, oh yeah, just hang in there, just be persistent, keep on going. I think the interesting question is, but how, right? What sets the people that persist to the point of success apart from those who give up a little bit too early and never reach that kind of height? And so I think the answer to that goes back to the very first point I made, which is doing things for the right reasons. See, I think that when you are in a situation where there are no rewards and the going gets tough and you can't really find out, you don't really know what's going to happen. If you're doing it for the right reasons, that's what's going to be your motivation in the end. And how would this look in your life? I'll give you sort of an example by talking about work, because you all are students. Work is basically your occupation. And I'm sure it takes up a lot of your brain space and your time. So the question I want you to think about is, why are you working? Like, why are you studying and spending all of your time reading books and taking tests and going to school? And I remember very distinctly when I was in Princeton and I was confronted with this question. Why am I working? It was my first midterms week, and I was overwhelmed by the amount of work that I had to do. I felt so behind. I was genuinely worried that I was going to fail a calculus exam that I had to take the next day. And I was sitting on my couch in my common room, utterly exhausted, too stressed to sleep, but stressed that I couldn't sleep, just alone, wondering, why am I working? And on some level, I knew, okay, I wanted to work because I needed to graduate, I needed to get a job, and I needed to earn money and fund my life. But there was sort of a deeper and slightly more troubling line of thought. And that was that my GPA was a measure of my success. And that if I wasn't a good student, then who was I? What was my identity? What gave me value? And looking back now, I see that my motivation was upside down, that I was using my work to define who I was, when really my work should be a product of who I wanted to be and what I wanted to do. To sort of make this a very specific example, I also used my college admission to define who I thought I was, when really my college admission should flow out of who I am and who I want to be. And so it took me a while to sort of figure out, that work for me, I want it to be an intellectual exploration. I want it to be a process in which I learned not just about, what this thing was and how it worked, but why was it like that? And how could I change it? It was a process of gaining the tools and skills that I needed to change things for the better and to make an impact in the world. And sometimes this can come at the cost of grades. I think about the story of one of my good friends, Will. So he actually became very interested in particle physics when he was in high school. And he just sort of decided, I'm interested in building a nuclear fusion reactor in my basement, which is kind of a funny, crazy thought. But he did some Googling, and he was like, oh, I think it's possible. And so he spent sort of all his time in high school just looking up online how to do this thing. He had no physicists around. His school wasn't very supportive. As he said it, he was in the middle of nowhere, Ohio. And so he would go on eBay and look for spare parts. He would scour junkyards. And he spent so much time doing this that he just sort of neglected his classes and had C's and D's in all of his high school classes. But he ended up building this thing in his basement and ended up going to the International Science Fair twice with it and landing a job with the Princeton Plasma Physics Lab and ended up going to MIT. And so I think his story was just so interesting to me because he, to me, embodies this idea of pursuing your curiosity. Hey, I want to build a nuclear reactor. Let's see if I can make it happen. And that to him was far more important than necessarily, engaging in high school or his classes. And what was the great thing about his story is that in pursuing this curiosity, he had the byproduct of success. He got into MIT. He ended up going to a great school. But I think the problem lies when we use that byproduct of success as the ultimate goal and lose the original motivation and the original joy that comes with learning and growing and pursuing that curiosity and growing as an individual. And so, for me, if there's one thing that I hope that you take away from my talk, it's this: to find your value in what really matters and to think about that for a second. Why do you do what you do? Because I think we live in a society that tells us to find a value in things like SAT scores and college admission acceptances. But I think that there's something much greater that we can be focusing on and aiming towards. I think sometimes I've been preoccupied with this idea of getting that reward. But in the 4 years since I've won my science fair competition, I can tell you now that success fades. What does actually stay with you is the curiosity and the skills that actually got you that reward in the first place. Instead of focusing on the reward, I realized that if I focused on the very things that the reward recognized, that those were the things that would stay with me for the rest of my life. And that's what I really hope that you guys focus on in the process of high school, even in the middle of this really stressful environment that I know a lot of you guys are in right now. So as you think, thank you. So, so as you think about, what it is that truly matters to you, what it is you want to find your value in, I want to sort of suggest one potential thing. We're all here because we're interested in the medical professions, right? Like Dr. Sacker said, it's a calling. And I think it is a calling because you have been given so much. Obviously, being at the Congress is an incredible accomplishment, and I am so proud of all of you and really congratulate you on being here. But I also think that you're in here in part because you've been given much. You have wonderful families with parents that are in the stands supporting you right now. You have schools, you have opportunities, you live in the US, you have the opportunity to go on to further education. But there's a saying, to whom much has been given, much is expected. And I think for me, one of the things I think about a lot is, how can I serve and give back in the way that because I've been given so much. So I think the medical professions are ultimately about serving other people, and that's something that I've been pursuing in my own life. I'd like to end sort of with a quote that my sister gave during her graduation speech when she graduated from Princeton 2 years ago, because I feel like it really sums up a lot of what I want to say. And that's this: the greatest danger in life is not failure, but succeeding at things that do not really matter. Let's stop leaving behind 1,000 broken and messed up hearts in the wake of our rushings. Let's go slow with God's strength, create grace, live true. We don't really need more time, just enough time. Time to breathe deep and time to see reality, time to sing, time for joy, time to know that in Him all things hold together. Let's dream big, travel often, pursue hard, stay hungry, and love with abandon. For we do not know how many moments there are between now and eternity. And She's right there in case you're wondering, in the first row. So.
Awesome. Here you go.
Okay, time for a selfie. Thank you guys.